In the heart of Lagos, where money speaks louder than love and power is passed down through bloodlines, one woman dares to wait on faith. This is not just a love story, it is a war between tradition, pride, and the silent agony of childlessness. Chioma first met Hugo at the University of Lagos during a heated student debate on gender equality. She was fierce, intelligent, and passionate. Hugo was captivated. He wasn't used to women challenging his views, much less outshining him in a packed auditorium. But Chioma did both effortlessly. Their banter became the talk of campus, but behind closed doors, their connection grew quietly and powerfully. He sent her poetry in handwritten notes. She cooked him jollof rice on weekends in her hostel room. Against the backdrop of youthful dreams and endless possibilities, love bloomed. By their final year, everyone knew them as the power couple. Hugo, heir to the Crescent Empire, with its fingers in oil, tech, and real estate. Chioma, from the Okonkwo family, respected but not as globally influential. Despite the disparity in wealth, Hugo never treated her as less. His eyes saw strength and grace, not status. After graduation, he proposed at a private beach in Alash, ring hidden in a coconut shell. As the sun dipped beneath the Atlantic, she said yes through tears. The elite circles buzzed. Banana Island had found its next royal couple, but neither knew the storms that lay ahead, storms that even love might not survive. The engagement of Chioma and Hugo made waves across Lagos society pages. The wedding planning was nothing short of regal. Designer outfits, gold-embossed invitations, and guest lists that included governors, billionaires, and international dignitaries. Chioma moved into the Obianuju family's sprawling estate in Banana Island, a glass mansion trimmed with Italian marble and smart tech from Tokyo. Her wardrobe changed overnight: couture dresses, Hermes bags, Louboutin heels. Yet beneath the glam, Chioma remained grounded, often visiting her parents in Surulere and sponsoring scholarships for less privileged girls. But her new world came with new eyes, watchful, critical eyes. Hugo's mother, Lady Ifeoma, welcomed Chioma with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Over tea served by uniformed maids, she'd make harmless comments about family values and fruitfulness, glancing pointedly at Chioma's belly. The staff whispered, the aunties watched, but Hugo stood by Chioma's side like a lion. They had plans: travel the world, launch a charity, enjoy each other before children came. But within 6 months, tongues began to wag. Is she pregnant yet? Maybe she's hiding it. Or maybe she can't conceive. One day, while hosting her Banana Island Women's Circle, Chioma overheard two ladies whispering behind imported orchids. She's always out attending events, maybe she's not ready for motherhood, one said. The other scoffed, or maybe her womb's just empty. The words pierced deeper than any dagger. That night, Chioma cried into Hugo's chest, the pain of being judged before even having a chance to try. Hugo promised her they would face it together, but neither of them could predict how vicious the whispers would become. The first year of marriage was a mix of beauty and burden. While Banana Island nights sparkled with champagne and chandelier-lit galas, Chioma and Hugo faced a growing void in their bedroom. They had agreed not to rush, but the pressure began to mount. Every family gathering brought forced smiles and subtle questions. Hugo's father, Chief Obianuju, maintained a quiet, dignified presence, but his silence on the matter was heavier than words. Lady Ifeoma, on the other hand, became less subtle. By now, I had already given birth to Hugo, she'd say, sipping her hibiscus tea with disdain. Despite the stress, Chioma tried to stay hopeful. They went to the best fertility clinics in Lagos. Doctors were optimistic at first. Hugo's sperm count was strong, Chioma's ovaries seemed active. It may take time, they were told. So they tried. Medications, ovulation calendars, diet changes. Each month ended in disappointment. Then came the invasive tests, tubes, scans, injections. Chioma endured them all with grace, but the toll was visible. Her glow dimmed. She wore more makeup, laughed a little less. Meanwhile, the whispers turned into direct questions, even from friends. One afternoon, after a routine scan, the doctor quietly shut the door and delivered a blow. Chioma had a rare uterine condition that would make natural conception extremely difficult. Not impossible, he said, but very unlikely. Chioma held her breath. She walked out of the hospital like she wasn't broken inside. She didn't tell Hugo immediately. That night, while he talked about a business trip to Dubai, she sat beside him, nodding. But her mind was replaying the doctor's words. Her womb. Very unlikely. A storm was brewing inside her, and Hugo didn't even see the clouds. Chioma couldn't sleep. The doctor's words echoed louder in the silence of their massive bedroom. Marble floors, silk sheets, ocean view. None of it could quiet the ache inside her. The next morning, she watched Hugo get dressed in a custom Italian suit, full of smiles and big plans. As he adjusted his cufflinks, she finally broke. "Hugo, we need to talk." He turned, concern washing over his face as he sat beside her. "What is it, my love?" She told him everything, the condition, the diagnosis, the doctor's warning. Her voice shook, but she didn't cry. Hugo didn't speak immediately. He pulled her close and held her. "We'll find a way," he whispered. "If we can't have a child naturally, we'll try science. IVF. Anything. We'll do it together." For a moment, Chioma believed him. They went back to the clinic and began IVF treatments. The medications made her hormonal and bloated. She fainted once after an injection. Hugo was there every step, even flying in specialists from South Africa. But the first cycle failed. Then the second. On the third, they saw 2 pink lines, brief hope, only for her to miscarry 6 weeks in. That night, Chioma collapsed on the cold bathroom floor, curled around her empty womb. Hugo found her there, sobbing like a wounded child. He lifted her into his arms and rocked her. "I can't do this again," she whispered. "Then we'll stop," he replied, but his eyes were glassy, torn between loyalty and grief. What neither of them knew was that Lady Chioma had been watching everything closely. And she had already begun planting seeds with the elders, with certain distant cousins, with women who knew how to whisper the right kind of rumors. 3 months after the miscarriage, Chioma tried to move on. She busied herself with charity work, co-hosting fundraisers with celebrities and politicians' wives. She wore a smile like armor, dazzling in silk gelly and gold-sequined gowns. But beneath the glamour, her heart was in pieces. Hugo grew quieter. He worked late more often, traveled frequently, and when he was home, he stared too long at nothing. Still, Chioma trusted him until the day she saw the text. It was innocent at first glance. A message from Amaka HR saying, "Thanks for last night. Still thinking about it." Her chest tightened. She waited till he came home, phone clutched in her hand. "Who is Amaka?" she asked, her tone ice cold. Hugo blinked, confused, then defensive. "She's in human resources. We had dinner after the Abuja conference." It wasn't like that. Chioma wanted to believe him. She searched his face for lies, but all she found was fatigue. He insisted nothing happened, but the trust between them had cracked. Later that week, at a brunch hosted by Lagos socialites, Chioma overheard whispers again, this time about Hugo. "He's such a good man, staying faithful this long," one woman said with faux concern. Another replied, "Men like that don't wait forever. His mother's already scouting alternatives." Chioma felt her heart race. That night, she confronted Hugo again. "Is your mother trying to find you another wife?" Hugo hesitated too long. That hesitation said more than words ever could. Chioma didn't cry this time. She simply nodded, walked into her closet, and slammed the door. Hugo stood in silence. Outside their Banana Island mansion, the palm trees swayed gently. Inside, a war had begun, one that wouldn't be fought with fists, but with pride, power, and secrets. The following Sunday, the Crescent family estate was bustling with guests for Chief Obianuju's birthday. The event was a spectacle, traditional drummers, fireworks, designer igbadas, and flowing champagne. Chioma, in a stunning emerald lace gown and diamond-studded headpiece, moved through the crowd like royalty. But inside, she was seething. As she approached Lady Chioma to greet her, the older woman smiled coldly and said, loud enough for others to hear, "You're glowing, Chioma. One would think it's pregnancy." A few women nearby chuckled politely. Chioma froze. The venom was clear. Later, while Chioma stepped aside to take a call, she overheard a conversation between Lady Chioma and a distant cousin from Enugu. "We can't waste Crescent blood on dreams," the cousin said. "There's a girl in the village, clean, respectful. She'll bear children." Lady Chioma replied, "Hugo will resist, but I know how to break him. He loves his father's legacy too much to lose it over romance." Chioma's phone slipped from her hand. Her world swirled. They were plotting to replace her. That night, Chioma told Hugo what she heard. He looked stunned. "She wouldn't," he started, but the doubt in his voice betrayed him. "Tell me, Hugo," Chioma asked, trembling. "If it comes to me or the family, who do you choose?" He couldn't answer. Silence roared between them. She didn't wait for his reply. She packed a small bag and left the mansion, stepping into the Lagos night, not knowing where she was going, but certain she couldn't stay. Meanwhile, back at the estate, Lady Chioma made a phone call. "It's time," she said. "Bring the girl to Lagos." Chioma checked into a luxury hotel in Victoria Island under a pseudonym, desperate for peace away from Banana Island's scrutiny. Her phone buzzed endlessly, Hugo, her mother, socialites demanding to know the drama behind her sudden disappearance. She ignored them all. In her suite, she let herself break down, sobbing into silk pillows, replaying years of trying, pleasing, and enduring. Her silence was her only rebellion now. But silence doesn't hold back storms. Back at the Crescent Mansion, Lady Ifeoma's plan unfolded. A young woman named Nena arrived from Enugu, soft-spoken, modest, and obedient. She was introduced to the household as a new maid, but the staff knew better. They watched how Lady Ifeoma spoke to her, how she walked her through Hugo's childhood portraits and family legacy like preparing a queen-in-waiting. Hugo was furious when he returned home to find Nena there. "Mummy, what is this?" he shouted. But Lady Ifeoma was calm. "This is your future, Hugo. If Chioma won't give us a child, then someone else must." Hugo tried to reach Chioma, but she wouldn't take his calls. He drove to her favorite places, her old church, the Surelier orphanage she sponsored, even her parents' house, but she was nowhere. For the first time, Hugo felt what she had lived with for years, helplessness. Meanwhile, Nena moved quietly through the mansion, her eyes always on Hugo, studying him. She never spoke out of turn, never disrespected Chioma in public. But in private, she smiled at herself in the mirror and whispered, "I will be more than a maid. I will be his wife." In the shadows of power and tradition, a new rival had entered the ring, and Chioma had no idea her absence was creating a dangerous opening. Chioma's days at the hotel turned into weeks. She refused to return home even when Hugo's calls turned from pleading to desperate voice notes. "Please, Chioma, come back. We can fight them together." But the betrayal had fractured something deep in her. Even love, she now realized, had limits. One afternoon, her friend Zainab visited unexpectedly. Zainab, a fiery fashion entrepreneur, was one of the few who truly knew Chioma's battles. "They want you out because you're not carrying a child," she said, eyes blazing. "But what if you fought back on your own terms?" That night, Chioma began making moves. She contacted her doctor and resumed treatments, this time privately without pressure or announcement. She also hired a PR consultant. If she couldn't win the battle with a baby, she would win it with visibility. Within days, her image flooded Lagos elite circles again, Chioma dazzling at art exhibitions, donating to women's health causes, speaking at high-end brunches in head-turning Ankara couture. Social media buzzed, "Chioma is back." And glowing. But only Chioma knew the glow came from grief, pain, and quiet rebellion. Meanwhile, back at the Crescent Mansion, Nena's presence was becoming bolder. She wore lighter makeup, took private walks with Lady Ifeoma, and once served Hugo breakfast in Chioma's favorite china set. Hugo exploded. "Stop this nonsense," he yelled, sweeping the tray aside. "She's not my wife." But Lady Ifeoma remained calm. "She will be if you let this go on." That night, Hugo sat in the dark of his home office, torn between the woman he loved and the family legacy hanging over his head like a sword. Across the city, Chioma held a syringe, prepping for another hormone shot. Alone. Tired. Yet something fierce sparked in her eyes. This wasn't just about motherhood anymore. It was war. A month later, Lagos was buzzing with invitations to the Crescent Foundation's annual gala. A glittering affair where business, politics, and fashion collided. This year, Chioma made her grand return. She arrived in a custom red Diola Sago gown that hugged her body like it was sculpted on her skin. Cameras clicked, influencers gasped, and whispers ignited like wildfire. "She looks like royalty," someone murmured. "And she's alone," another added. But Chioma walked tall, her presence commanding, even without Hugo by her side. Inside, tension crackled like electricity. Lady Ifeoma's smile faltered when she saw Chioma. Nena stood in a muted gold dress behind her, like a shadow waiting to rise. Chioma approached the table with grace, ignoring the stares. "Good evening, Mummy," she said calmly. Ifeoma forced a nod, but the chill between them could freeze the Atlantic. Hugo arrived minutes later, visibly tense. When his eyes met Chioma's, he paused. She gave him a small, unreadable smile. He moved to greet her, but Lady Ifeoma gently tugged his arm, guiding him toward Nena. Cameras caught it all. Midway through the gala, Chioma made a bold move. She walked on stage to present a new foundation focused on maternal health and infertility awareness. She spoke with power and poise, sharing pieces of her journey without naming names. Some wounds are silent, she said, voice steady. But silence doesn't mean defeat. The hall erupted in applause. Even Chief Obianuju looked impressed. But Lady Ifeoma's lips were a thin line of fury. After the event, Chioma stood by her car, ready to leave when Yugo approached. You were incredible, he said, eyes full of regret. Come home. She looked him in the eye. Is it still my home if there's someone else in it? She got into the car and drove off, leaving Yugo speechless. The following morning, the Crescent Mansion was in uproar. Lady Ifeoma fumed, pacing the marbled hallway in a silk wrapper and headscarf. She humiliated us. On our own stage, she barked. Chief Obianuju sat quietly in his study, watching Chioma's speech replay on TV. She carries herself like a queen, he muttered. If only she could give us an heir. His words were soft but laced with finality. The next moment, Lady Ifeoma summoned Yugo. Her eyes were cold, her tone sharper than a blade. You must make a choice, Yugo, she said. This embarrassment cannot continue. The Crescent name is not a playground for barren women. Yugo flinched at her words. She's my wife, he snapped. And I love her. Lady Ifeoma lowered her voice. Then your love will destroy everything your father built. The board is watching. The elders are asking questions. You've been warned. Then she laid the final card on the table, a traditional summoning to the family shrine in Anambra where marital legacies are questioned and, if needed, annulled. Meanwhile, Chioma received an anonymous letter slipped under her hotel room door. They are preparing to strip you of your place. They want to cleanse Yugo for another bride. Be ready. No signature. Just fear. She folded it slowly, her pulse racing. That night, she called her lawyer, began compiling documents, and quietly transferred ownership of her NGO to a separate trust. If they wanted to erase her, they would find her carved into every part of their legacy. But what Chioma didn't know was that Nena had begun consulting with a diabolical prophetess in the outskirts of Ape, one with a reputation for opening wombs and closing destinies. Something darker than jealousy was brewing, something ancestral. A dusty road led to the prophetess's shrine, hidden deep within the mangroves of Ape. Nena arrived in a discreet SUV, her face veiled, her heart pounding. The woman who met her at the gate was no ordinary seer. Mama Ekigiani was feared across the region for her accuracy and her price. Her compound reeked of herbs, smoke, and something more, something ancient. Inside, Nena knelt with a calabash in hand. I want him to love me, she whispered. I want his family to accept me. I want to carry his child. Mama Ekigiani stared at her, eyes glazed white. The wife still holds the spiritual gate, she rasped. As long as her shadow lingers, you remain invisible. Nena's breath hitched. Then help me remove her shadow. The old woman cackled, mixing oils, herbs, and blood into a dark paste. This will open your path, but there will be a price. Something precious must be sacrificed. Nena nodded slowly, determination in her eyes. She was no longer a timid village girl. She was becoming someone else, someone dangerous. Back in Victoria Island, Chioma felt a sudden chill while reviewing charity proposals. Her hands trembled. She couldn't explain it, but something felt off. She called Zainab. I feel like I'm being watched, she said. Zainab brushed it off at first until Chioma's driver found a small, black pouch tied under her car bumper, filled with feathers and strange bones. Panic gripped her. She rushed to see her pastor, who confirmed her fear. Someone is trying to manipulate your destiny. That night, Chioma knelt to pray, her tears soaking the floor. She didn't know where the attack was coming from, but she knew it was time to stop being the hunted. The war for her marriage, her womb, and her worth had gone spiritual. Chioma's prayer vigil stretched into dawn. For the first time in months, her sobs were not just from pain, they were from battle. Her pastor, Reverend Tund, and a small group of intercessors gathered in the chapel's inner room, laying hands and breaking spiritual barriers. Every arrow sent to dry your womb, we return it to sender, he declared. As oil dripped onto her forehead, Chioma felt heat surge through her belly. Her body trembled. Something shifted. Whatever was sent against her, it would not find her sleeping. Meanwhile, at the Crescent Mansion, Nena stood before Yugo's door, tray in hand, wearing soft silk and subtle perfume. Can I bring you dinner? She asked sweetly. Yugo's gaze was blank. No, he said flatly and shut the door. But Nena wasn't moved. Her eyes narrowed. You will look at me soon, she whispered. Later that night, she snuck into the garden to bury the prophetess's charm under the almond tree, a tree Chioma once planted with Yugo during their first year. As she covered it with soil, the wind howled and she smiled. Her time was coming. Back at her hotel, Chioma received an unexpected visit from Chief Obianuju. He sat quietly across from her in the lounge, eyes heavy with age and unspoken truths. "You remind me of my late wife," he said. "Strong, elegant, unbending." Chioma was silent. Then he sighed. "They want to take your place, but the board, they're watching. If you leave quietly, it will be easier for everyone." Her heart thudded. "And if I don't?" she asked. His reply was cold. "Then you will be the first Crescent wife to be publicly replaced." Chioma sat still as he walked away. But in her heart, fire ignited. She would not bow. Not now. Not after everything. Let them come. 2 weeks later, an elegant white and gold invitation arrived at Chioma's hotel. It wasn't sent by Hugo or Lady Ifeoma, but by Nena. The event? A private family dinner to celebrate a new beginning for the Crescent legacy. The location? The Crescent mansion. The message was loud and clear. Zainab, who was with Chioma when she opened it, hissed. "She's not even pretending anymore." Chioma folded the card slowly. "Good," she said. "Then I won't have to pretend either." That evening, she called her stylist. Then her makeup artist. Then her jeweler. The night of the dinner, she arrived not as the abandoned wife, but as Banana Island's silent thunderstorm. Draped in royal blue velvet with a crystal-trimmed train, her makeup flawless, Chioma stepped into the Crescent mansion like she still owned it. Gasps followed her. Nena, seated beside Lady Ifeoma in a bright yellow eye-row, and Booba visibly flinched. Hugo stood too quickly, his mouth parting in disbelief. Chioma smiled faintly. "You invited me," she said. "So I came." Dinner was a battlefield of forced smiles and sharp glances. Lady Ifeoma tried to dominate the table talk, praising obedient women who know their place in tradition. Nena chimed in softly, offering to clear plates. Chioma never blinked. Then, just before dessert, Hugo finally spoke. "Chioma, may I talk to you?" "Privately." Nena's spoon clinked against her glass, her hands trembling. In the study, Hugo stared at his wife. "I miss you," he said. "But everything is collapsing. My family, the board, they want Nena. They want an heir." Chioma looked him dead in the eyes. "And what do you want, Hugo?" He didn't answer. Outside the door, Nena listened, clutching a small sachet from the prophetess. Her next move would leave a scar. Nena waited until Chioma left the study. She quickly tucked the sachet into her blouse and slipped into the kitchen. With practiced movements, she mixed the powdery contents into a bottle of Zobo she had prepared earlier, Hugo's favorite. "Let his heart remember only me," she whispered as she sealed the cap. The prophetess had warned her the charm would work only once, but its effect could be lasting if administered under a crescent moon. Tonight was that night. Back at the table, Chioma had resumed her place with regal calm, pretending to sip her wine while her mind spun. Hugo soon returned, his eyes stormy and confused. "I'll walk you out," he said quietly. Chioma rose, sensing something had shifted in him, but not enough. As they reached the marble driveway, he hesitated. "You still have my heart, Chioma, but I'm drowning." She stepped closer. "Then fight for air," she replied, "because I won't keep rescuing you." As Chioma's car pulled away, Nena approached Hugo with the drink. "You look tired," she said, offering it. He took the bottle absent-mindedly and drank. Within minutes, his mood began to dull. His memories blurred. His mind became foggy, but strangely comforted. Nena guided him gently to his room. "Rest," she cooed. "I'm here now." The next morning, Chioma received a message from one of the staff. "He slept in her room last night. Voluntarily." The words stung like fire. She shut her laptop slowly, every nerve in her body screaming. It wasn't just about loyalty anymore. It was about identity, about power. They wanted to erase her completely. But Chioma had just received her own news. The latest test results from her private doctor. Her hormone levels had spiked. The treatment was working. Chioma stared at the lab report, her hands trembling. Positive. For the first time in years of failed cycles, dashed hopes, and broken prayers, her body had responded. The treatment was working. Her hormone levels were optimal, her womb receptive. She sank to her knees on the cold hotel floor and wept, not from pain this time, but from a joy so terrifying it felt fragile. Zainab burst into the room minutes later after seeing the missed call. When Chioma showed her the report, they screamed, laughed, and cried in each other's arms. "I have to protect this," Chioma whispered, clutching the paper like scripture. "No one can know yet. Not even Hugo." Zainab nodded. "We keep this quiet. For now, you're not just fighting for a marriage, you're fighting for destiny." They contacted a private clinic in Dubai and arranged for an immediate relocation. By the end of the week, Chioma was gone from Lagos, no press, no notice, no trace. Meanwhile, in Banana Island, the atmosphere at the Crescent Mansion had shifted. Hugo was distant, dazed. Nena clung to him constantly, always in his shadow, always serving, always available. But something wasn't right. He was cold, uninterested, sometimes forgetting her name. The charm had worked, but only halfway. Hugo wasn't in love. He was confused, detached. And that wasn't what Nena had hoped for. Lady Ifeoma began growing impatient. "Where's the pregnancy? What are you waiting for?" she barked one morning. Nena fumbled for words. That same day, Lady Ifeoma called the family prophet. "We need to cleanse this house. Something is blocking our progress." The prophet's face turned dark. "Yes, a rival spirit, and it is not in this house." His eyes gleamed. "It is rising far away, but closer than you think." Dubai offered Chioma the peace she'd forgotten existed. The cool desert nights, quiet clinics, and anonymity allowed her to finally breathe. Her doctors were optimistic, her womb had responded better than expected, and a viable embryo was successfully implanted. 2 weeks later, during a quiet morning in her villa, the nurse smiled as she turned the ultrasound monitor toward her. A tiny flicker blinked. A heartbeat. Chioma gasped, clutching her chest. "You're here," she whispered. "You held on." Back in Lagos, the Crescent home was unraveling. Hugo had begun questioning everything. The haze was lifting, and he started recalling fragments, Chioma's last words, the taste of that zobo, the nights he couldn't account for. When he asked Nena about it, she stammered. "You were tired. I was only helping." But Hugo's eyes narrowed. "Since when does helping feel like a trap?" He stormed out, rage simmering. At a board meeting 2 days later, Hugo shocked everyone by resigning from his CEO role at Crescent Holdings. "Until I have clarity," he said, "I'm stepping back." Chief Obianuju nearly choked. Lady Ifeoma hissed through gritted teeth, "This is her doing. She's still controlling you." But Hugo was done listening. That same night, he secretly booked a flight to Dubai. Zainab had finally responded to his messages with one line, "If you want answers, come see for yourself." The next day, Chioma opened her villa gate expecting a grocery delivery and came face to face with Hugo. For a long moment, they just stared. No words. No anger. Just history and heartbreak. Then, from behind her robe, he noticed the subtle bulge of her belly. Chioma froze as Hugo's eyes dropped to the gentle curve of her belly. 1,000 thoughts raced through her mind. Should she lie, protect herself, or finally let the truth out? But the tears in his eyes made the decision for her. "Yes," she whispered. "It's yours." Hugo's legs nearly gave out. He stepped forward, trembling, then knelt before her and placed his hand gently on her stomach. "You're pregnant, after all this time?" She nodded. "I didn't want to tell anyone until I was sure. Until I knew this wasn't just another heartbreak." They sat in silence in her sunlit Dubai living room. For the first time in years, there was no performance, just two broken people remembering how to be whole. Hugo poured everything out, the confusion, the betrayal, the charm-laced drink, Nena's manipulation. "I thought I was going crazy," he said, "but I felt you even when you were gone." Chioma listened quietly. Then she said, "They almost won, Hugo. If I hadn't left, if I hadn't fought, we wouldn't be here." Meanwhile, in Lagos, Lady Ifeoma sensed the shift. A messenger from the prophetess arrived bearing a warning. "The shadow has taken root. The womb you tried to silence is now louder than drums." Panic gripped her. "Find him. Bring him home," she screamed at her assistant. But Hugo was gone. And Nena, now desperate, took the final step. She returned to Ape for the ultimate ritual. "If I can't have him, no one will," she told Mama Ekijiani, handing over a strand of Hugo's hair and a drop of her blood. But this time, the darkness stirred. The prophetess touched the items, then recoiled. "Foolish girl," she spat. "You've just called war upon yourself." In the dead of night, the prophetess lit her altar. The ritual Nena had requested was forbidden to most. Dark, dangerous, and irreversible. As the fire roared and ancient chants filled the hut, Mama Ekijiani warned her once more. "If you do this, there will be blood. And it may not be his." But Nena, driven by rage and rejection, only nodded. "Then let it be blood." The flames turned black. The spell was cast. Somewhere in the spirit realm, a tether between Hugo and Chioma strained under unnatural pressure. At that exact hour in Dubai, Chioma clutched her stomach in agony. She collapsed in her bathroom, gasping. Hugo heard the thud and burst in, finding her on the floor, eyes wide with fear. "The baby," she cried. Within minutes, they were racing to the hospital. Doctors rushed her into emergency care. Her vitals were erratic. Her womb was spasming, rejecting the pregnancy as if under attack. "There's no medical reason for this," the doctor whispered, baffled. But Chioma knew. Something unseen had touched her child. Hugo, now frantic, called Reverend Tund back in Lagos. "Pray. Something is wrong. We're losing the baby." Reverend Tund gathered his intercessors that night, calling on every spiritual weapon. "No power from the pit of hell will destroy this destiny," he thundered. For 6 hours, the hospital and the chapel fought the same battle in two realms. By morning, the doctor returned with cautious relief. "The baby's heartbeat is back. We nearly lost it, but it's strong again." Hugo held Chioma's hand, tears streaming. "I almost lost you both," he whispered. "Not again." But back in Ape, Mama Ekijiani stumbled from her altar, blood dripping from her nose. "The child is protected," she growled. "You cannot touch what has been marked by the heavens." Chioma and Hugo returned to Lagos under the radar, their arrival known only to a few trusted friends. Though her pregnancy was still delicate, Chioma insisted on returning stronger, wiser, and spiritually fortified. Hugo, now back at her side fully, was prepared to confront whatever awaited them. As they drove through the familiar gates of Banana Island, Chioma's heart pounded. Not from fear, but readiness. This time, she was no longer coming back to beg or explain. She was returning as the rightful queen, bearing a miracle no one could deny. At the Crescent Mansion, Lady Ifeoma's shock was masked behind a practiced smile when she opened the door to find Chioma standing tall, hand in Hugo's. "You didn't expect me to survive, did you?" Chioma said softly. Hugo stepped forward, his voice firm. "Mother, things are changing. Chioma is my wife. She's carrying our child. Anyone who can't accept that can walk out of this house today." Silence. Then, the sound of Nena shattering a glass in the dining room, her face pale as ash. The battle lines had been drawn, and this time Hugo was standing on the right side. Weeks passed, and Chioma settled back into the Crescent Mansion, but this time on her terms. She converted one of the guest suites into a quiet prayer room, another into a nursery. Lady Ifeoma remained cold but distant, watching, waiting, seething. Meanwhile, Nena disappeared without a word, escorted out by Chief Obianuju himself, who had grown tired of the chaos and whispers tarnishing the Crescent name. Chioma continued her antenatal care at a private wing in Lagos Island, where the doctors grew increasingly amazed at her progress. Then came the ultrasound that left the lead specialist speechless. Chioma stared at the screen, heart pounding. "How many did you say?" The doctor blinked. 5. Quintuplets. And they're all alive and well. One boy, for girls. Zainab screamed with joy, spinning in circles. Hugo collapsed into a chair, hands over his face in disbelief. Chioma didn't speak at first. She simply stared at the screen, tears streaming, then whispered after all the shame. "God has multiplied me." The news spread slowly. First among the hospital staff, then the elite circles, and finally to the women who once mocked her. The Barren wife was about to become the mother of nations. The news of Chioma's miraculous quintuplet pregnancy spread through Banana Island like wildfire. Socialites who once whispered behind champagne glasses now flooded her inbox with congratulations laced in guilt. Even the same women from her former women's association, those who accused her of being cursed or wayward, now wanted to organize a baby shower in her honor. Chioma, gracious but guarded, smiled through it all. "Let them celebrate what they once condemned," she told Zainab. "My womb will speak louder than their words ever did." Lady Ifeoma, however, struggled to mask her shock. Her once iron grip on the family's narrative was slipping, and the very woman she tried to push out now sat at the center of it all. Late one night, she entered the family shrine and wept, not just in repentance, but in fear. "I fought the wrong battle," she muttered. Chief Obianuju, more reserved than ever, finally spoke in her defense at a Crescent board meeting. "Chioma is not just Hugo's wife. She's the woman who has redefined legacy." And as her belly swelled and her glow returned, Chioma prepared not just to birth children, but to birth redemption. Chioma's final trimester was unlike anything her doctors had seen. Security was tightened around her, a private delivery plan coordinated with the top specialists flown in from Europe. Hugo became her full-time protector, attending every checkup, massaging her swollen feet, and reading baby name books late into the night. "How do we even name 5? He laughed once, and Chioma smiled through the discomfort. "We name them like we fought for them," prayerfully. Each movement in her womb reminded her of the years of silence. And now, the coming sound of 5 tiny voices that would change everything. On a rainy Monday morning, Chioma went into labor. The hospital wing was locked down. 5 incubators waited in a quiet, sterile room, ready for history. Hours passed in agonizing suspense. Then, one by one, the cries came. First a girl, then another, then a boy, and then 2 more girls, each healthy, loud, and perfect. Tears flooded the room. Hugo held Chioma's hand, sobbing uncontrollably. "You did it. You gave us a whole generation." Chioma, weak but smiling, whispered, "Now let them mock me if they dare." The day Chioma returned home with the quintuplets was a media spectacle. The Crescent Mansion gates were lined with press, drones circled above, and fashion bloggers documented her postpartum glow like royalty. She stepped out in a flowing white bubu, her 5 babies cradled in custom bassinets carried by nurses. Hugo stayed close, protective, and proud. The headlines read like prophecy fulfilled: Banana Island miracle, Crescent matriarch delivers quintuplets after 18-year wait. For the first time in a long time, Chioma wasn't being pitied, she was being revered. Inside the mansion, a grand nursery had been built, each corner themed for a child, each crib engraved with their names. The staff, once skeptical and whispering, now treated her with sacred respect. Even Lady Ifeoma, watching quietly from the staircase, descended slowly and knelt before Chioma. "Forgive me," she whispered, tears falling. "I let pride blind me." Chioma stared at her for a moment, then reached out gently. "You fought me, but God fought for me." As the cries of newborns echoed through the halls that once carried silence and scorn, the Crescent Mansion finally felt alive. Just when the dust seemed to settle, an unexpected visitor arrived at the Crescent Mansion, Nena. Dressed modestly, with no makeup and swollen eyes, she stood at the gate requesting an audience with Chioma. The staff were stunned. Word reached Hugo, who rushed down, confused and tense. "Why are you here?" he asked coldly. Nena's voice trembled. "I came to return something, and to confess." Her presence reopened wounds no one wanted to revisit. But Chioma, calm and unshaken, asked that she be let in. Inside the living room, Nena knelt and opened a small calabash wrapped in cloth. Inside it, the remnants of the charm she had used. The hair, the powder, and a broken bracelet of Chioma's, stolen from her room months ago. "I was desperate," she said, her voice cracking. "But the prophetess told me the price would come for me too. I've been sick ever since." Chioma listened, silent. Hugo stood stiff, disgusted. Then Chioma spoke, her voice soft but laced with power. "I do not hate you, but know this, what was meant to destroy me only delivered me." She rose, picked up her crying daughter, and turned her back. The chapter of betrayal had ended, but not without scars. A week after Nena's visit, the Crescent Mansion prepared for a naming ceremony like no other. The guest list was exclusive. Governors, ambassadors, clergy, and celebrities. All eager to witness what many called a divine event. The air was rich with the scent of jasmine and incense. Drummers lined the marble walkways. Traditional dancers rehearsed beneath chandeliers. The babies, dressed in silk and lace, lay peacefully in their golden cribs. Chioma, glowing in royal purple, stood before the crowd with Hugo at her side, both of them ready to announce names steeped in meaning. With tears in her eyes, Chioma introduced them one by one. Kizaram, God answered me. Alubub, wondrous work of God. Ikmini, God's time. Amarachi, God's grace. And the only boy, Obiajalu, my heart is at rest. Each name drew cheers, gasps, and even sobs. Lady Ifeoma wept openly, holding Obiajalu in her arms. Chief Obianuju gave a rare smile as he toasted with aged cognac. For Chioma, the ceremony wasn't just about names, it was about rewriting her story. These weren't just babies. They were living, breathing proof that waiting wasn't weakness. It was divine strategy. 6 months later, the Crescent Estate was no longer the house of sorrow and silence. It was a palace of life and laughter. The cries and giggles of 5 babies echoed down halls once filled with tension. Hugo and Chioma became symbols of resilience and faith in Lagos elite circles. Magazines featured them, their story inspiring women across the country. Chioma launched a foundation for women battling infertility, giving voice to what was once her shame. She spoke at conferences, headlined galas, but always returned home before sunset to her babies, her miracle, her peace. One warm evening, Chioma stood on the balcony, the Banana Island skyline glittering before her. Hugo wrapped his arms around her waist, Obiagelu asleep on his chest. "Do you ever think about how close we were to breaking?" he asked softly. She smiled. "Every day. But then I look at them and I remember why we didn't." Downstairs, Lady Ifeoma sat in the nursery rocking Amarachi gently, now fully transformed by the joy those children brought. The enemies that once laughed were silent. The same mouths that mocked now marveled. They called her Barren. They mocked her tears. But in the fullness of time, grace spoke louder than gossip, and 5 little voices rose to silence every insult. This is not just a story of love, it is a legacy born in fire, tested by time, and crowned with glory.